Well, what have we today? I almost hate to go into this subject because it's so freaking stupid, but it's what's happening. And some of you may have heard of Frank Frazetta, the fantasy art painter, who has been an influence on me somewhat. Came away with some lessons from all that. I guess I first saw his work in a magazine when I was about 13, 14 years old, something like that. And, it had an effect, whatever. So essentially, in a nutshell, what he did was he worked in comics, American comics in the 50s and 60s. And then at some point, he began doing paperback covers. And he had a lot of influences, and that was okay. Hal Foster and Roy Krinkle and things like that. And at some point he picked up classical painting techniques, either from a teacher or from books in the library, which back then, people did that. They went to libraries and things. And I used the same techniques myself, and I had to read and read and read because you can't find the stuff anywhere else. And hundreds of books on painting until I cracked the code, pretty much. Well, anyway, so he did something that no one had done, which was introduce these classicist painting techniques into basically sort of a pulp fiction paperback market that we have here. So essentially those techniques have been developed over centuries, and they use methods that basically, what's the word? They take into account how the eye works, how perception works, and maximize the effect visually in the paintings. So it has to do with contrast, color temperature, how forms are portrayed, how distance effects work, all sorts of things like that. It's highly technical. And so he used all those, and it brought a realism to the work that no one else had at that point. But he also, because of the nature of the subject matter, which was, sword and sorcery, as it's called, barbarians and scantily clad women and things like that, he also introduced these themes, basically sex and violence. And so on the one hand, you had this kind of pure classicism combined with a sort of a pulpy, trashy, low-level sort of sex and violence thing, as I said. So anyway, recipe for success right there. But what happened is that ultimately I was drawn to the, you do get drawn into the physicality of it, but that's, you could look at it two different ways, or many different ways, depending on who you are. Some of it might be like classicist sculpture, mythology. Some of his paintings did look like mythology, monsters and Medusas and heroes and things like that. So there is that element to it. But depending on who you are and you look at these things, two people might see two completely different things. So if you are an aggressive, toxic male, for example, you will look at this stuff and think this is your big hero, your Bruce Lee, your alpha male, your tough guy, and it's all about fighting and fucking and, that sort of thing. And so what you do, and I've drawn sex and violence myself. In a lot of ways, the audience wants it. In his case, it's like he put a lot of those things in there because it helped him earn a living. He had done a lot of funny animal comics in the 1950s, And I think at one point he said, this is the real me. You know, so that's kind of what he felt he really was, or maybe he just said it. But at any rate, he wound up doing this other stuff and built this whole sort of cult of personality and things. Well, anyway, when I came along and I started, people said I copied, you know, and it's like, no, I never copied anything. But there again, they're not informed. They don't understand the skills. And, but anyway, they just saw it as, you know, I'm dissing their hero, which actually I never was. Well, I did a little bit because of them, you know, is kind of my reaction to it. It's like, oh, okay, well. But anyway, you know, lately, social media, Facebook, you've got these groups, and it's like I'm a member of probably 200 groups because I use it for promotion. So I'll go and post things, you know, in the Tiki group or the Mermaid group or the Witch group or the Frazetta group or Comic Art group or something like that in order to, you know, make some sales. Well, you know, I get kicked out of Frazetta groups. I got kicked out of the Frazetta Roundtable basically because, you know, I posted some work there and, no, what it was an auction listing. And in the auction listing, you know, it was like the Monster versus the Maiden or whatever it was called, you know, ink drawing by Master Mike Hoffman. And of course, that's kind of hype, you know, like Stan the Man Lee, Mike the Master Hoffman or something. But anyway, some other guy said, oh, he's not a master. You're not a master. You're a protege or blah, 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 or something like that. And I said, no. I am a master now that you bring it up. I mean, I didn't bring it up, but you brought it up. So this is what mastery entails. I said, no, you're not a master. I said, well, here, answer some simple questions. So I started asking questions, technical questions. God, the snails are everywhere. And, you know, what color is added to a surface that turns away from the eye? That's a trick question. What color is added to the highlight on a red balloon? That's not a trick question. You know, all kinds of technical questions like that. And incredible furor over there. People flipping out, you know, all these people posting, all these people getting angry. And, you know, some were artists, some were not. And you know what? Not a single person could answer even one question correctly. And it's like, here's the guy that you claim to admire. You have no understanding of how he worked, how the craft functioned, which is just mad. And here I am, you know, explaining it, which I teach now in my art academy. I teach all this stuff because, of course, Frazetta, you know, when asked, he said, well, I don't know how I do it. I don't know how I do it. Just do it. I guess it must be brilliant. And of course, he knew exactly how he did it because there's no other way to do it other than knowing the techniques. So anyway, he said that, but it wasn't true. And so after I got attacked, I said, you know what? I'm blowing the roof off this thing. I'm blowing the lid off. And I'm not keeping this stuff a secret anymore because I kept it a secret too. And just used it for my own advantage. But of course, I'm 60 years old now, so, you know, if you want to start learning this stuff and trying to catch up, maybe you can, maybe you can't. It's not just about painting, it's also about drawing, of course, and that's another complex subject. But anyway, so what happened recently is that these, you know, another Frazetta group, and it's like people attacking, you know, and I'm like asking questions, and they're attacking, and they're, one point I said, you know, some guy's like, well, you can't just say things, you have to back them up. You have to back up your you know, your argument, your claim. And he said, well, I can back it up because I was in the military and I teach boxing, I'll kick your ass. And it's like, okay, well, back up means that you provide data, you know, information and examples of your argument. You know, if you want to go around assaulting people, you know, but you see, that ties into what I was talking about, male toxicity. That's kind of another subject, but I do want to go to that a little bit. So anyway, he's the type of person that gets attracted to this sort of thing. And Frazetta was not in the military, you know. But another thing that's happened recently is that his character, the death dealer, has been sort of co-opted by the military, and they built a statue of it on some military base somewhere in America. And you know, kids, it's not funny. It's not in good taste. You know, in World War II, they had, you know, what do you call them? Mascots or whatever on the airplanes. You know, this is, you know, shoot 'em dead or something, you know. And it's like they were in a war. And it's like, you know, it's kind of childlike, I guess, in a way, but, you know, I guess that's understandable. But it's like the military, to be telling guys, you know, oh, you're a death dealer. It's like, you're not supposed to be a death dealer. You're supposed to be a protector. You're supposed to be a peacekeeper, not a goddamn death dealer. So, anyway, that's more toxicity. So, the thing about male toxicity, and these days you have a lot of people, who's that shrink? Can't remember his name off the top of my head. People say I'm arrogant, you know, and it's like, well, you don't like what I'm saying, but you don't have a counter argument for it other than flipping out. So, you know, what am I supposed to think? What is anyone supposed to think? What's his name? I can't remember. But anyway, he, you know, he claims there's no such thing as male toxicity. And you look at him and it's written all over him. Male toxicity. So, anyway, this whole thing of male identity, that they have to, you know, guys feel they have to hang on to their strength, or their this, or their that, or whatever manly virtues they think they have. You know, a lot of guys benefit from being paralyzed from the, you know, from the neck down. It's happened where, you know, some guy's an asshole and he gets paralyzed, and all of a sudden he sees life in a completely different way. The LGBTQ movement is an eye-opener for a lot of people, because it's like, you know, you don't have to wear these you can play these roles that you've been, you know, taught from birth. Ultimately, what it comes down to as conscious beings is that we are human beings first, and a gender second. So when you put the gender first, you're really missing the boat. So anyway, back to this Frazetta stuff. Well, here I am in this group again, and it's like, you know, coming after me. Can't respond to my statements. Can't create, you know, legitimate counter arguments or anything like that. They're talking about, you know, kicking me out of this group too. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll start my own group, you know, because not only is what I'm doing about education basically sharing these techniques, which are essentially sort of secret or something, or no one went looking for them, I don't know. And so blowing the lid off that, and also confronting this male toxicity crap. And with Frazetta, the Frazetta Vendetta of the fans against me, that's, you know, it's really what's going on. Now, there's another aspect to all this, which is that all this supposed interest in Frank Frazetta, or comic books, or fantasy art, or Tarzan, or Edgar Rice Burroughs, you know, and people spend all this time online in these groups, you know, posting pictures and posting this and posting that, and it's like, you know, this is just basically an aspect of, I'm just calling it screen addiction, so that it's, you know, not social media or you know, internet addiction, stuff like that. It's basically screen addiction. So, you know, they're claiming to be all interested, so interested in this, you know, and posting every day about the subject you're so interested in, when really all it is just a reason to be online. It's just something to do with your screen. The interest is not that great. It's fake, largely fake. So Here's a visual analogy of what's happening with the screen culture. If you imagine a person at a slot machine. Slot machine's here, they're pulling the lever. Durn, durn. Lemons, apples, whatever. They're going by. You get a close-up of their eye, you see these symbols going by, and they sit there pulling this over and over and over and over again, hoping for a pleasure fix in the brain. Of course, I've talked about this before, it's intermittent rewards. And so anyway, vroom, vroom, vroom. Well, same cartoon situation, only now the slot machine is a phone. And instead of going like this, they're going like this. Scroll, 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 scroll. Their eye, Facebook, over and over and over and over again, hoping to get a pleasure hit in the brain chemistry. So here's this person doing this, and all of a sudden, just like with any addiction, reality itself disappears completely, and they basically, my visual analogy is they fall on their face. And what they fall on their face into is basically a ditch or a tube, a vein perhaps, and they're going through this vein, blub, 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 you know, hoping to get a lift. Oh, it's really flooded out here, look at this. Hoping to get a little buzz, blub, 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 going down there right along the bottom. Oh, I got a like, whoa, I go up a little bit, but then I go down again, coasting along right at the bottom. Oh, do I get a little hit? No, and I go back down again. So that's where most people are now. My experience, you know, with Facebook, it's like these older people, younger people are fleeing Facebook. They're going to other things like Instagram and Twitter, but there again, it's flip, 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 flip. You know, I've seen Instagram, it's like, I can't look at more than 30 images. It just burns your mind out. So anyway, this business is what's going on with the Frazetta groups and things like that. It's like, they're not on there to learn. They're on there to make statements, to get high. It's not working too well, and they're getting frustrated. And man, I'm getting in the way, really bothering them, you know. So those are the elements. It's addiction, toxicity, a lot of things. You know, the addiction, as I said, it basically makes reality disappear. It's like, now, what happened to your life? You know, what about the world? What about the universe? Is everything just this now? So, anyway, that's probably enough for now. You know, and it's after all this said and done, it's like, I'm not perfect. And I get a lot of people saying, oh, you're a sociopath, you're narcissistic, you're, you know, this and that and everything else. And it's like, you know, I do have a diagnosis, but it's not that. And I said, it's like, you know, if you're an expert on psychiatry, then maybe you'll figure it out. If you get it right, I'll let you know. It's like, no. Well, hell, I might as well tell you right now, because I'm not hiding it. A lot of people aren't. Diagnosed about a month ago with what was called Asperger's, which is basically high-functioning autism. So it has good and bad. You know, I wish I'd known a long time ago. But socialization, things like that, picking up cues from other people, it doesn't work that well. Plus, there are a lot of areas that I'm not expert in at all, you know, mathematics, I don't know, sports teams, you know, all kinds of things. It's like my areas of ignorance are immense. But the areas that I'm expert in those, that's the thing about high-functioning autism, is that, you know, many people are brilliant. You take someone like Tesla, you know, it's like brilliant, genius in terms of electricity and energy and things like that. Had no social connections to anyone, had no friends. And that's par for the course. So anyway, how do I know this? It's like, well, I was diagnosed, of course, but you know, when it comes to psychology textbooks, it's like I've read about 3 feet of them, you know, enough to get several degrees. So, you know, anyway, when it comes to my level of expertise in things, you know, it's mainly art and music. So what's happened, you know, with this Frazetta business is that, you know, people say, oh, well, you're not as good, you know, you're not as rich, you're not as this and that and everything. It's like, well, you know, in his case, that's all he did. In my case, I'm doing everything. I'm doing much more. I'm not just doing paintings. I'm telling stories, I'm writing, I'm running a website, I'm running a business, I'm doing production work. You know, I wear so many hats, it's absurd. All one person, you know. And of course that goes on along with the Asperger's. But of course, you may know they're not using that term anymore. It was used for a while. The DSM, Diagnostic Symptoms Manual, is what they use in psychiatry. And they're basically just saying it's spectrum. Autistic spectrum disorder. At one end of the spectrum, you're completely non-functional, repetitive behaviors, can't speak, things like that. At the other end, you know, you have limits, but then again, you're also able to focus intensely on things beyond what most people would be able to do. So, anyway, cat's out of the bag now, and, you know, make of it what you will. It's like, well, I guess I can get attacked for that too. But, you know, essentially I have a sense of justice. So when things like this happen and they're not just, you know, like, you know, art or male toxicity, or this thing about, you know, stuff about the military. You know, what really gets me, pisses me off, is this slogan that gets repeated, you know, that the military is keeping us safe. Keeping us safe. It's like, you know, I don't think they're keeping us safe. You know, oh, well, they're keeping our interests safe overseas. That's why we're, you know, they're hurting people in this country by the defense budget, draining us like a goddamn giant vampire, you know, getting the poorest people, you know, into the armed forces because those people have no choice. You know, I've met a lot of people like that lately. It's like they joined because it's like they're black, they're poor, they had no future, and it's like they go in, they get, you know, wounded or shell shock or concussion or something, and it's like, oh, someone's coming. So anyway, it's another sort of slogan you're just supposed to accept without question. But you know, the military doesn't keep us safe. Garbage men keep us safer. You know, take away the garbage so we don't get infected with germs and shit like that. They do a better job of it. I mean, when were we ever invaded? You know, when are they? You know, not protecting anyone. You know, and this thing of service, serve your country. It's like, wait, they're getting paid. Serving the country and themselves, both, one, the other, which? You know, you want to ask some difficult questions? No, sweep it under the rug. So anyway, that's a real pisser too, you know. When it comes to 9/11, where was the protection? Where was it? There was none. And you know what? The whole damn thing probably wouldn't have happened if not for decades and decades of American military activities overseas. You know? It was the blowback. So anyway, there's such a thing as male toxicity, and the things that men are supposed to do, you know, they're supposed to do the hard labor. You know, muscles, for example, don't fit into the economy anymore. If you got muscles, you can be a construction worker or something. It's like they have no value anymore. It's a thing of the past. So, the virtues of masculinity that are over, you know, one thing is, you know, protecting, you know, nurturing, doing constructive things to help your family and your community. Those are things you can do, you know. It's like when I get attacked and I respond, You know, yeah, I get angry sometimes, but it's like, you know, I know that I have a leg to stand on. I know that what I'm saying is true. I know why all this is happening. And, you know, I said last time, it's like you can speak to make a statement or you can speak to learn. And either you learn something eventually or you don't. So anyway, I guess that covers it. Thanks for listening. Ciao.